Greetings, everyone. It is Monday, September 29, 2025, here on the Wolverine podcast, live on a Monday night. Two-man booth here. Anthony Broom here with Clayton Safey. Chris Ballas will be back with us later this week. And a lot to get to today, despite it being a bye week, week 5 across the Big Ten. I want to talk about some takeaways there. Sherrone Moore and his program came out of their bye week submarine this week. No, they were never really in the submarine, but a quieter week without a game to play last weekend. We'll discuss some of that. And like we do to end every Monday night show, we will take your questions both from the board using the message board, our famed message board, the Fort, and also the questions that you submit via the live chat here, watching here on YouTube. So Clayton, welcome back. Hopefully a good bye week to recharge the batteries and get into what the team is calling the next quarter of the season.
And I bet the coaches would say quieter week. We were all over the country recruiting, and it's probably as busy for them as any. But no football game, and thank God it was one of the best sports weekends really that I can remember. It's hard to say that without a Michigan game, but it was so loaded that it kept you occupied throughout, from the Ryder Cup to an unbelievable college football slate on Saturday, great NFL slate, baseball ending up, and so I'm I had a great time. And we also have Michigan basketball media day tomorrow and get to watch practice, talk to all the coaches and players. So it is a great time of year for sports. There's no question about it. And now we get Michigan football back this weekend at the Big House. So I'm excited. And I'm sure a lot of our viewers and listeners went to the Zach Bryan, John Mayer concert at the Big House, first ever on Saturday night. They set the record, over 112,000, most attended concert in U.S. history, $5 million in merch sales. I think that's a record as well. So it was a busy weekend.
Yeah, the concert thing is super cool. I didn't go. I didn't know anybody that went, but you see those visuals of the big. I mean, we're used to seeing the Big House full, but to see it full and the field's full, you've got the stage in the round in the middle. Hopefully, that's the start of many events to come there, because by all means, it seems like it went extremely well for them. So we will discuss takeaways from around the Big Ten. We will chat what Sherrone Moore and the program had to say on Monday. We spoke to a couple players as well, Rod Moore and Damon Payne, Mr. Payne, as Lou Esposito coined for him. But of course, as we do every week, we want to shout out our friends over at HomefieldApparel.com. Head over to HomefieldApparel.com for what my money's worth, and for what our partnership's worth, of course, the best vintage-inspired college sports gear on the internet. Their Michigan collection is phenomenal. You wouldn't know it by being outside in the state of Michigan right now, but the weather is going to cool down soon. You're going to want more the new crew necks. You're going to want the hoodies. You're going to want, they've got, the socks in there. If it's going to stay 80 degrees for the foreseeable future, you're going to want some lighter, breathable t-shirts as well. They've got a ton of those there in that Homefield Apparel collection. Or if you're got a buddy or a friend or family member that goes to a directional school, Eastern Michigan's got a collection on there. Central Michigan Fire Up Chips has a collection on there. I believe Western Michigan as well. So whether it's Michigan, the directional schools, or for whatever fan is in your life, head on over to HomefieldApparel.com. I love their stuff. I've been singing their praises for years. We've been singing their praises for years, and I wouldn't vouch for it if I didn't love the material, love the company as well. So shout out to our friends down there in Indianapolis, in the heart of Big Ten country, at HomefieldApparel.com. Tonight, we are also brought to you by ourselves at the Wolverine. Use that promo code UM1 for 2 months of access to our site for a single dollar. And at this point, that's going to get you through Ohio State week now. So I'm not saying you should wait, but right now, your money has never, your $1 has never been better spent than using that promo code UM1 for 2 months of access to our site. Now, like Clayton said, we're going to get that bleed over college basketball coverage here soon. We got Team Media Day tomorrow. We've got Big Ten Media Day next week in Chicago. So we're going to get to that overlap point here. So you're going to get the most bang for your buck as possible. So use that promo code UM1 for 2 months of access for $1. All right, Clayton, well, you sort of hit on it at the top of the show. The college football slate, I think, mostly delivered this weekend. Pretty much every showdown game came down to the wire. A couple of them didn't, but were still interesting watches as it pertains to Michigan. Nonetheless, you have Oregon taking down Penn State. You've got Ohio State going out to Washington, getting a multi-score victory out there. I thought USC Illinois was a fantastic game. Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Ole Miss. The list goes on and on. I had a tremendous, we don't get to have many weekends like that. I thought it was a tremendous slate, a tremendous weekend of football, and a lot to maybe take away from Michigan's schedule as well. I'll ask that here in a second, but your thoughts from the weekend that was across college football.
It was an awesome weekend, really, from Friday night when you had Florida State, Virginia going to overtime, and one of the more dangerous looking field storms I've ever seen from Virginia. But good
Squirrel White just disappeared.
Yeah, I mean, it just like that. I mean, they just got ran over. Like I don't know what happened to them. I was watching without volume at an establishment, and then you see the highlights throughout the weekend. And it's like, whatever happened to the people who got ran the hell over on Friday night? But then you had a great noon slate, or at least good one, and then the 3:30 and night games were unbelievable. But getting to watch USC and Illinois, I thought that was really interesting and kind of illustrates how tough it is to go across a couple time zones in the Big Ten. USC not looking like the team that we've seen, necessarily, and credit Illinois for that. The way they bounced back after losing by 1 billion to Indiana the week before was pretty impressive, and they pull out a last-minute victory. Could have been more lopsided if they couldn't, if they would have stayed away from some of those mishaps at the goal line. But Ohio State looks really, really good, especially on defense. I think they've only allowed 22 points all season long. They win 24-6 over Washington. And then Anthony had something that, of course, I'm sure most people know, the Penn State-Oregon game was great. Alabama-Georgia was really good early. And then it was funny, like Penn State-Oregon was boring, but Alabama-Georgia was really good. And then Penn State-Oregon got crazy in the fourth quarter and overtime. And Alabama-Georgia was just basically, just not much action going on in the second half. So it kind of worked out. But my main takeaway from watching these games over the weekend was when you look at the quarterbacks. Like everyone was talking coming into the season about how this was going to be the year of the quarterback in college football, from having a Manning there to Lenora Sellers and DJ Lagway. Garrett Nussmeier, is he the number one quarterback? Is Cade Klubnik the number one quarterback? Drew Aller comes back, his third year as a starter at Penn State. All these guys, Sam Levitt at Arizona State, was the number one rated quarterback in the country coming into the year, according to On3. And the guys who have impressed me the most, and I'm not alone here, are CJ Carr at Notre Dame and Dante Moore at Oregon and Diego Pavia at Vanderbilt, Carson Beck at Miami, Ty Simpson at Alabama, Trinidad Chambliss, the Ferris State transfer at Ole Miss, who outduels Garrett Nussmeier in the LSU-Ole Miss game. Joey Aguilar, the App State transfer who's at Tennessee. Fernando Mendoza, the Cal transfer who's at Indiana. It's all the guys that were in that next tier are the best ones. There are still an unbelievable amount of great quarterbacks in college football. It's just not necessarily the ones that you expected coming in. So it's been fun to kind of watch these stars emerge throughout the sport. And Bryce Underwood is right on that list too. He's one of the more exciting watches in the country too, and he's only getting better. So you get a week off of him, unfortunately, but got to watch a lot of other good quarterbacks. But ton of takeaways. But that's one that's just kind of been sticking with me throughout. That, man, we didn't know who, apparently we didn't know coming into the year who these guys were going to be, but we have some really damn good quarterbacks in this country.
Without looking at anything, and mind you, some teams have played 2 conference games. Most of the conferences only played 1. Who would be the Big Ten championship game right now? Without looking.
The 2 teams I think are the best, or in terms of the
I'm just saying, season ends today. Who would be the Big Ten championship game?
Well, I don't. It's too hard to say with it. It'd be a tiebreaker, right? You'd have Michigan in that mix, Oregon.
I'm putting way too much into this. As of right now, the two teams at the top of the conference, because they played 2 conference games, Indiana and Oregon, who will play next weekend, that 3:30 game before Michigan. So Oregon's, of course, the defending Big Ten champion, and Indiana was a playoff team last year. So that's not super surprising that they're off to good starts. But I think what my biggest takeaway from watching this league over the weekend is that I think the closest to, I mean, and certainly you need to give Oregon props for going to Penn State. I think when I do my power rankings tomorrow, they'll be at number 1. I think Ohio State probably at number 2, but there's a lot of teams, especially with this unbalanced schedule, that I think can make some noise here. And Michigan in particular, because over the weekend, 5 teams on their schedule, on their upcoming schedule, they have what, 9 remaining games left or 8 remaining games. 5 of those teams played this weekend, and a couple of them played each other. If Michigan can find a way to go out to USC and win, which I certainly think when you look at both lines of scrimmage, that is a winnable football game. It's going to be very difficult. It's a night game for us here on the East Coast. Of course, that's going to be a 7:30 kick on NBC. I think it's going to be a lot of Michigan fans there. USC announced to sell out. But my biggest takeaway from the weekend is that if Michigan can win that USC game, assuming they take care of business against Wisconsin, we'll talk about the month of October here in a minute. But my overarching feeling is that if they can find a way to get that game, they might be a one-loss team going into the Ohio State game. Now, with the teams that we saw play this weekend, like I said, USC, I think certainly far more explosive offensively than Nebraska was. Defensively, maybe a little bit better. That's a winnable game. Ohio State, that's going to be a war, like it always is. Washington, I've talked about Damon Williams, Jonah Coleman, Denzel Boston potentially being the best quarterback, running back, wide receiver trio in the conference. That's pretty much all they have offensively. That was my big takeaway from that game. And Damon Williams played really well too. They just kind of played with their foot a bit in the red zone, and all of a sudden, penalties, and all of a sudden that was a couple score deficit. And then Northwestern, I mean, they beat a UCLA team that is probably heading towards 0-12, 17-14. There's no reason that shouldn't be a romp. But that was the biggest overarching thing, is that I think if Michigan finds a way to get this one at USC, that's going to change the conversation around, I do these bowl projections every week. Citrus Bowl, Cheez-It Bowl, Vegas Bowl. They find a way to get that game, I think that you will start seeing them pop up in some college football playoff discussions.
Yeah, and it's crazy how wide open it is in general. Like, you go through the whole top 25, and Michigan's at what, 20, I think, this week. And I mean, all those teams have a shot. There are teams outside the top 25 that have a chance. Washington, coming into last week, didn't even receive a vote in the AP poll, which is kind of ludicrous. And I know they didn't win and they didn't score a touchdown against Ohio State, but that's still a good football team. So there are all sorts of teams with a chance. That's kind of what makes this fun with the 12-team playoff. But I think you're right. USC didn't look great against Illinois. They took advantage at the end and made it a close game and took a lead. But they're going to look better at home. There's no question in my mind about that. It's you have to remind yourself every year, at some point during the season, that teams aren't just going to play the same way every single week, where it's like, oh, well, if they look like that against that team, then, they're going to lose to this team because that team killed that other team. And it's like, no, it doesn't really work like that in college football. Look at Indiana last week. As we said, they beat Illinois by 1 billion, and then they're in a dogfight against Iowa, and they win 20-15. Should have been 20-13, but Mendoza runs out of the, takes a safety at the end, which seemed unnecessary to screw everyone's spread up like that. But regardless, not mad at them. They won the football game. But so my point is, that USC game is still going to be really tough, even though they didn't look great against Illinois. They were, Michigan has to go out west, just like they had to come a couple time zones over to go to Champaign. So it's a huge, huge game. And the Washington game, I still think that's a good team. But I do think, you have significant talent advantage in that matchup. Damon Williams is awesome. Jonah Coleman's a great college running back. Denzel Boston is an awesome receiver, and he's going to be in the NFL next year. But like you said, I feel like across the board, Michigan has a better football team. They got to play clean. They got to play well. You can't play kind of herky-jerky like you did at Nebraska, in games against teams that do have that firepower. But if you take care of business, then I think you win the home games. The USC game is kind of the wild card. And I know Maryland doesn't look like maybe the cupcake that we thought they were going to be coming into the season, but that in Michigan State will be a challenge on the road too. I didn't mention that, but the early November stretch of Purdue, Purdue, Northwestern, and then Maryland looks really, really gettable. And you have a bye week in there, and you can be healthy going into Ohio State. And man, you're right. If they can just, have one loss coming out of USC and Washington, I think they have a hell of a chance of making the college football playoff. Even if they do drop USC, you can still win out and beat Ohio State. Certainly, there have been years like last season when they had much tougher odds to win that game and they pulled it out. So the USC game's big. Excited to to see this Wisconsin matchup as well and see what Michigan looks like coming out of the bye with their head coach back. But yeah, it's a huge month.
Certainly looked really good coming off the last bye week they had when they dropped 50 from the clouds on Northwestern. Of course, it's not applicable season to season, but we'll see how it goes there.
But Wisconsin's probably better than last year's Northwestern.
I was thinking about that earlier, but not. I don't know how much better.
Yeah, like they're in that realm where like Wisconsin could win on a given week, but they could also get killed on a given week. They're in that zone right now, and I think they're more likely to get killed than they are to win a game against a quality team right now because they looked really, really rough against Maryland. They're banged up all over. It just is not a good situation right now.
The vibes aren't great. Their head coach might be on the verge of, if not getting fired, those cries being very loud. Juju Noriega for $1.99 says, y'all do a great job. Drew Aller is booty. Go blue. Poor Drew Aller. Penn State, where star quarterback recruits go to stagnate. We've seen that a ton over the years. Megan,
I'm waiting for Sean Clifford to take the next step.
If we could bring up Michigan's schedule again here, I wanted to talk about that October slate before we move on to the next part of our show. So obviously this Saturday, they will get Wisconsin at noon. Big noon Saturday, Fox's first taste of the Wolverines this year. Just announced today, the USC game will be 7:30 on NBC. Next Saturday, that's this following Saturday, October 11th. We'll get a kick time for Washington, I assume, next Monday. And then the Monday after that, or maybe it's the 6-day window, we get the kick time at Michigan State. But, this was the zone of the season last year where Corey Ward first has a super chat in here for $5. Corey, feel free to get a question or a comment in there. We'll read it. But thank you so much for your generous gift. He says, just wanted to show some love. You guys are the best. Oh, that's very kind of you. I appreciate that.
Appreciate you, Corey. Keep doing you.
Thanks for stopping by, man. We appreciate that. What I wanted to say is that very different team. Last year is not, it's the guy. Of course it's the guy. I knew that. That's my bad, man. It's been a day. It's been a weekend. Corey, it was great to see you in Grand Rapids at the garage, Ada at the Garage Bar over the summer. So thank you for swinging through here, my man. What I was going to say is that the team is different from last year, obviously, but both teams were 3-1 coming out of those first 4 games. And then October was where we saw things. I don't want to say water found its level, but that was when last year's team started to stagnate. And it was pretty apparent that the quarterback situation was going to be an issue. The offensive line wasn't where we thought it would be. And those are maybe the 2 key areas where I feel good about these next 4 games, is that you do have a quarterback that I think will just continue to exponentially get better. Granted, they catch the football off of his fingertips. We will talk about that shortly as well. And the offensive line is trending up as well too. But got to get this one Saturday. I think that Washington game, like we said, is extremely winnable. And then there is no scenario, barring you beat Ohio State again and go to the playoff and make a deep run in the playoff, where I think a loss to this Michigan State team is acceptable this year. So what are we looking at these next 4 weeks? In my head, I had them at 4-2 after 6 and 6-2 after those first 8 games. How are we feeling about this October slate? Because this is a big test for Sherrone Moore and his program, setting themselves up for potentially being a playoff team.
So there are 8 games left, and Ohio State is the toughest one remaining. But, the other toughest are USC, Washington, Michigan State, probably throw Wisconsin in there. Maryland might be a little bit frisky at the end, and you go on the road. So all the remaining tough games are in this month that's coming up, the month that Michigan will play its next game in, and then Ohio State at the end. So, I could see them dropping one. It would be at USC, in my opinion, if they do. I'm not ready to say that I'm predicting that at this point. I think that Michigan can certainly go in and win that football game. They're going to have to play well, not have stupid penalties, not turn the ball over, like all those prerequisites to winning these tight games. And I feel like Michigan is in that zone right now. Wisconsin's in a different zone where, like we said, they could get killed at any week, or they could maybe pull out a tough victory against an okay team or an average team. Michigan's in that zone where if they play a quality team, it's probably going to be a close game. I think they're going to continue to get better throughout the season, and they could, blow out a really good team at some point. But at the very least, I think in the next few weeks, if you play USC, Washington, it's going to be relatively close. So you got to play clean. You got to play well. I'll be interested to see what this team looks like, what kind of progress they made over the bye week. The offensive line will be facing a much tougher defensive front that Wisconsin possesses. Wisconsin's been a mess, but they've stopped the run pretty well. At the same time, Luke Fickell said today that they haven't faced a challenge yet like the Michigan run game with a mobile quarterback like this, running backs like they have, an offensive line like Michigan has that is continuing to grow. So, I think that a lot of what I feel like this team is going to be is going to have to do with how they look against Wisconsin, but it's pivotal. Do I have to make a record prediction for October at this point?
You don't have to. At this point, it's just go out and win the game or see what happens. I mean, preseason predictions don't mean anything. I'm not, just because I predicted that before the year, I'm not beholden to that once we get to game week. If they come out and drop another 50 burger on a team that does not belong on the same field as them, like they did, against Northwestern, against CMU a couple weeks ago, then I might pick them to beat USC. But that's the game that I think we all have circled, and it's not overlooking Wisconsin, but I think this is another one of those weeks where how it looks is pretty important.
Yeah. And it's just interesting too, even if they do drop 50 on Wisconsin, that game against USC is just going to be a different animal. It's its own entity. You're going all the way out west. So it'll still be a big challenge. You find yourself in a dogfight. If you can win by one or more, which are the best victories out on the West Coast for the first time in the regular season since 1989, then you are damn happy to have a long, happy flight home and get back to work and host Washington the next week in another huge game. So, man, look good this weekend, win decisively, and set yourself up to go try to win by one or more at USC. And then you're talking about really, you're talking about top 15, top 12 type of team. As you said, the college football playoff, all that buzz is going to start. The confidence is, could potentially grow. Bryce Underwood is going to keep coming into his own. It's still not even midseason yet, and he's going to only get better. And I think by midseason in a couple of weeks, he's going to be a much better quarterback than he was a couple of weeks ago. So then it gets exciting.
Yeah, and as far as the rankings go, like you said, Michigan's at number 20. I don't think Michigan fans are all that worked up about the ranking or, oh, we're better. Oh, we shouldn't be ranked this high. I think there's kind of an understanding that if you just keep winning, that's going to take care of itself.
It'll work itself out. I do think it is odd, though, that they fall all that way, yet the voters also agree that Oklahoma, especially with John Mateer, is one of the best teams in the country. So it's like you went there on the road and lost that, but you've won your other three. It is a little weird they dropped them, but it literally does not matter because Michigan has the type of schedule. You're in the type of conference that if you win, you're going to be in the college football playoff. And the AP doesn't even decide it anyway, so it's kind of a moot point, but it is a little interesting.
Yeah, I don't know when they drop. Don't they usually drop the first rankings during that, like, what's the Champions Classic event that they do? Is that when the first rankings usually are?
Like after week 8, I believe.
That sounds right. So if you're sitting there at 6-1, 7-1, whenever they drop these rankings, then you're going to be where you're supposed to be. They're where you'd like to be. So people who get worked up about that stuff, I've never understood it. I was the one that brought it up. I don't get worked up about it, but just a little food for thought there.
It's after week 10, and it is that'll be Tuesday, November 5th this year. So yeah, I think that will be the Champions Classic, which not all the teams in the Champions Classic are champions, but that's beside the point.
Who's in the field for that this year, by the way?
Isn't it always
it's always the same four. I was going to make a pissy kind of joke.
What was it? Duke, Kentucky, Michigan State, and
Kansas, right?
Kansas, yeah.
So rousing stuff there. We'll probably be in the building interviewing football players because that's what pays the bills around here. Let's go into Sherrone Moore's Monday press conference. He spoke to the media today coming off of Michigan's bye week, and a lot to kind of hit on. He talked about self-scouting, getting healthier. We asked him, whenever you have these bye weeks where some of your veterans are more worried about recovery and the younger guys are getting more reps, we asked him about guys that stood out. And wouldn't you know it, at wide receiver, those were two of the first names that came up, Andrew Marsh and Jamar Browder. Sherrone Moore also singled out Jasper Parker, Elijah Dotson, and linebacker Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng. Injury-wise, Gio El-Hadi, Brady Norton, Zeke Berry, Jair Hill, and Hogan Hansen. Got some injury updates there. It seems like they are all trending in a good direction. I don't know. This is me personally opinion here. I don't know that we see El-Hadi this weekend, but it seems like a lot of those guys could be good to go as early as Saturday. El-Hadi's job is secure. Those were probably the key things, but what did you pull most out of this Sherrone Moore press conference? It just seems like they're fired up and ready to get back after it.
There were 21 guys on the availability report for the last game at Nebraska. 16 of them were listed as out. Now, there are a few season-ending injuries in there, but that's a lot of guys. So I think the bye week came at a good time. Sometimes you get banged up early in the year, guys return. Sometimes it comes late in the year and you're kind of, just kind of piece things together at the end of the season. Sometimes it's mid-year, whatever it is. Michigan kind of got the injury bug early on. They've been able to survive, and, certainly wasn't injuries that cost them at Oklahoma, and they've won every other game. So they're fortunate in that sense, but this was a good time to get healthier. I think, and Sherrone Moore said later in the press conference that Giovanni El-Hadi and Brady Norton will be back competing this week. So we'll see if each of them play, but it seems like they're very, very close, and they're at least back at practice. So your offensive line is getting healthier. Hogan Hansen, he said, suffered a different injury than he had the first time that held him out of the first game against New Mexico, and really that caused him to miss most of the offseason beginning in late spring ball. So we'll see how he seemed less optimistic about tight end Hogan Hansen than the others. Zeke Berry's in a good place. Jair Hill, who got banged up at the end of the Nebraska game, is in a good place. So they need those guys. It's funny. I think we talked about it last week. Their thinnest position groups coming into the year were corner and offensive line, and those are the two positions that they've been hurt at the most. So and I guess it's not that funny, but they have survived to a certain extent. So now you're getting some of those guys back, which is going to be big, especially when you go on the road in a couple weeks for the USC game. The offensive line has to set the tone against a team that looks like you can move up front. And the defensive backfield is going to have to be healthy and ready to go against a team that's going to play a lot of wideouts, is going to throw the football a lot with Jaden Maiava in that passing game, some good wide receivers out there. So I think it's looking good. The tight end position is one that I think Michigan can get going a little bit more, but they need to be healthy. Marlon Klein and Hogan Hansen have only played one game together, and Marlon Klein didn't look 100% in that game. And I would doubt Hogan Hansen ever got fully to 100% before suffering a different injury. So tight end, I think there's still a lot of upside for that position group to be something that Bryce Underwood can lean on here going forward. But and worth mentioning, Andrew Babalola had his I don't know if you mentioned it, the successful surgery on his knee. So that's a nice, more of a next year thing. But they're on the mend, Anthony. I think the team is on the mend. But yeah, I guess some other topics we can get into too. But
well, the one I wanted to sort of spend a little more time on was the wide receiver situation and the drops. And I'll be honest, I tried like hell to tabulate this over the last week during the bye. I can't find a place anywhere that that compiles team drops. I'll just say this: Michigan's got 11, and through 4 weeks, I'm pretty sure that was the most in the country. They had 2 guys with 4 in Samaj Morgan and Shannon Goodwin, and that was something last week that Sherrone Moore talked about, and he brought it up again today. Where when you can't just tell guys to catch the ball because it doesn't give them any feedback. You have to reteach them the technique, and some of the finer details, and just basically get them to concentrate more. And that's what a lot of these drops have been. Or you're looking to make a play before the ball's in your hands, or you just don't see it all the way through. That's something that has been addressed over the bye week. And again, we're not going to know to what extent it actually helped until we see these guys in the field. But Andrew Marsh, Jamar Browder, the guys, and I think when I asked the question, I did say young guys, but I was really just looking for anyone in general that hasn't played a ton that sort of turn heads for them. But the 2 guys that he brought up were Marsh and Browder. Now, we've seen Marsh play a little bit. He's been a guy for, I think, the last few weeks I've advocated for seeing a little bit more of. Browder, not so much, because he's kind of more in the same mold as a Donovan McCulley. But, Sherrone said it that, if everyone's leash is the same, you got to practice well. This is his quote, by the way. You've got to practice well. You've got to go make plays in the passing game. You've got to run block. You've got to make the plays. You've got to do both of those things equally as well. We'll see by the end of the week who the best guys are. That's Channing Goodwin. That's Fred Moore. That's Andrew Marsh, Donovan McCulley, Samaj Morgan. That's all those guys. Kendrick Bell. So we're going to continue to see who has the best week and go from there. So I think I'll just sort of lay it out to you like this: buy or sell. Someone else is going to have a bigger role on Saturday at the expense of someone else.
I'll buy that. I feel like you come out of a bye and sometimes like there's some freshman or a younger guy that is just kind of in the rotation a little bit more. They had a good week. They got a little healthier or something like that. And especially at a position where it feels like they're trying to experiment more, open up the competition. Sherrone Moore, separate of your question about those young guys, and even a couple questions that he got about the drops. The first question of the press conference was about, what did you guys focus on during the bye week? And he, kind of went through everything: get healthy, work on fundamentals, get back to basics. We had tackling circuit, all this. And he mentioned open up competition in the wide receiver room. Like, that was one of the checklist items for Michigan this bye week. And I think that can help. It's interesting, the catch the ball thing. I understand it. And I kind of love that from a coach, where they're actually going to teach it instead of just telling someone what to do. It's like, no, teach it. Make sure it gets through to them. Make sure they're doing it. All that stuff is on you. But at the same time, there's got to be some pressure on these guys to be like, if you don't catch the damn ball, then you're just not going to be in the football game anymore. So catch the ball. And you can kind of give them a little bit of a nudge, or a lot of a nudge, if you are putting other guys in, rotating them in, saying this guy's going to earn more snaps. Your snaps are dwindling because you can't catch the ball. So, I think that you can, kind of pressure them in that way. I did find on Sports Info Solutions, they have Michigan at 10 drops. So, there's a little bit of opinion, as to what's a drop and what's not. I think we all agreed when we talked about on last week's podcast that Michigan's probably higher than even 11 that PFF has them at. But then again, probably some are, so are some of these other teams. So it's all relative, but that's tied for the 12th most in the Power 5 or Power 4. So, they're way up there, and it's an issue that has to be corrected. And they have already had their bye week. So they haven't played 5 games. They've only played 4. So, I think that we could see some more of those young wide receivers in there. I don't know about Browder. They kind of throw him in there at times, but Andrew Marsh, I think, is a guy that could see some more time.
He seems like the most logical one. And then even guys outside of that freshman bubble, I've seen a few people in the chat, a few people on the board have asked about Peyton O'Leary. He's not a name that's really come up at all. So I think of the names that we listed off, those 6 or 7 guys, that's kind of the group that they're working with. And I'm sure someone will jump into the comments and say it's a different skill set, or one of our resident coaches will correct me here. But I feel like if you're getting on the field as a wide receiver in this program because you can run block. Run blocking, obviously it's good technique. It's being strong, the lower body too, but you got to have strong hands to get after it in the run game as well. I would tend to believe that if you're able to get after it as a run blocker, you should be able to haul in the football too. And it's not even at this point, it doesn't even feel like a skill set thing. It is entirely on concentration and trying to make a play before it happens. And I get that with Bryce Underwood too, to a certain extent. The ball might come off his fingertips faster than it does a Jugs machine, which lessens the time that you have to make a quick decision on where you're going up the field with the football. But it's got to get better. I think that Marsh will get some more run. If I had to guess, probably at the expense of Channing Goodwin, just because I think as a receiver, period, I think he's been targeted. I think last I looked 18 times and has 7 catches. Like that connection just hasn't been there on the field. In addition to the drops, I think there's been a few plays. There's at least 2 plays this year I can think of where a guy like Donovan McCulley, who hasn't dropped the ball yet, but probably could have caught the football if he comes to it a little stronger and tries to make a play. So that group is on, maybe on notice isn't the right word for this weekend, but I'll be watching those guys pretty closely. Any other thoughts from Sherrone Moore's press conference?
I think there are plays to be made against this Wisconsin defense through the air. They got carved up by Maryland. Ty Simpson had an unbelievable game at Alabama against them. So I think there are going to be some opportunities there. As far as other things from the press conference, I think the offensive line competition will be interesting. We mentioned they're getting healthier, but doesn't mean Jake Guarnera is not going to start at right guard. He's going to have the opportunity to win that job, and Brady Norton has to take it back when he is fully healthy. So that'll be something to watch. And yeah, so I mean, the shuffling on the offensive line, getting healthier there, getting healthier in the defensive backfield are really big. The things that they need to clean up, some tackling issues, some drops. It's more like, okay, they put in the work over the last week, and just excited to see it on Saturday to, how it actually unfolds and it materializes.
We also spoke to Rod Moore today. I have a story coming on him a little bit later, but has basically said the 2 weeks where he warmed up but didn't play was more so in his recovery. It wasn't like the coaches decided just to not play him. I think in his recovery plan, it was, hey, get back in the battle rhythm of football, get back to warming up, get back to, the game prep feel of it. And then he said he was on a snap count in the Nebraska game. The tackle that he made on his second play was the first time he's been live since his injury. So that was some rust knocked off for him. And he hasn't decided, or him and his team or Michigan's team, strength and conditioning's involved in this, nutrition's involved in all this. They haven't decided what that play count is going to look like this weekend yet. That's something that'll come up a little later this week. But
nutrition's involved, whether or not how much he plays.
I probably misspoke there. I'm rambling here, dude.
I'm just giving you a hard
time. I'm having a day, my friend. So basically, it's all good. Basically, I think we're going to keep seeing Rod Moore kind of worked in, sort of like the dimmer switch. I think that really the big priority for him is he said early kind of coming back in his recovery, at least in terms of being on the football field, he'd practice for a day and then have pain for a couple more days. And he said he didn't really feel that after the Nebraska game. So it's still very much a work in progress. I think when he played 21 plays against Nebraska, maybe we see him for 30 on Saturday. It's going to be all dependent on how practice goes this week and what they decide to do. But Rod Moore, maybe not as simple as, hey, he played in one game and it's been 2 weeks, so now all of a sudden he's a full-fledged starter. I think that they're still kind of slow playing that. He's going to have a role, but so far so good on that front. Those were really the only major things out of today. We will talk to a bunch of players tomorrow, of course, as we do every week, but excited to hear what they have to say about this Wisconsin game and how the bye week went for the team as a whole. But any other thoughts on Michigan football? I mean, most of this will be football when we take questions, but any other thoughts on what we talked about?
I think that it's not surprising on Rod Moore that it's going to, continue to ramp up. They have to do this right, and they owe it to him to, get him back on the field the right way, get him reacclimated to football. So I think that's all good. And if he can play at an elite level, or the Rod Moore that we know and love by the end of the season, that's huge for this team. He's already out there leading, when he's on the field, he's leading when he's on the sideline as well. That's huge. And he kind of unlocks a little bit more of what this Michigan secondary can look like down the stretch. And even Zeke Berry getting healthy and the emergence of Jaden Sanders at corner unlocks some things. If they want to move Zeke Berry back to nickel at times and put Sanders out there because they feel like that's the best combination along with Jair Hill and then 2 safeties, they can do that. So they're unlocking a little bit more versatility now that they're getting healthier there. And that includes Rod Moore. And Rod Moore's dad is going to be DJing pregame at the game on Saturday. Is that right? So we're going to, that's awesome. That's awesome.
That is cool. I didn't know that was in his bag. So that'll be cool to see. Maybe that's an omen. Maybe he does get unleashed on Saturday if dad's going to be spinning the 1s and 2s down there. So
Rod Moore Sr. Let's go.
That's right. Let's get into questions now. We're going to take, again, if you want to use the super chat feature, that's going to move you to the front of the line like it did for Michigan Go Blue 1234, who asks, thoughts on the defense so far this season? Clayton, I'll let you field that one first.
I think it's been good. I think a lot of the issues they had against Oklahoma had to do with John Mateer being a great player. I think the coverage could get better, and it will, with more experience back there. A lot of guys playing big roles for the first time and getting healthier as well. I think that really the move of the season, and could be something that we look back on as a defining moment, was moving Jayshawn Barham from off-ball linebacker to the defensive line. That D-line the last 2 weeks, and again, it's been Central Michigan in Nebraska. I know you hate those. It's only been CNN.
Don't you dare do that to Nebraska.
Yeah. I'll do it to Nebraska all I want, but they just look way more dynamic up front. They look way scarier up front. You're going to have to slide the protection his way or chip him or do something. It's going to take a lot of attention to deal with Jayshawn, and that's going to open up other guys. I think Derek Moore was a little banged up to start the year. He looked better against Nebraska. Rayshawn Benny, Trey Pierce, Damon Payne, all those guys had big games against Nebraska on the interior. So you're getting, a little more production. I think that Jayshawn Barham moving up there was just a huge move. And then you have a superstar, as Sherrone Moore called him, like Cole Sullivan, who can play more. Jimmy Rolder can play more. Ernest Hausman's already in there in the middle. So the buttons they're pushing, the buttons they pushed last year were more like late October, November. They really hit their stride. They pushed some buttons after 2 games this year. The familiarity is paying off. They're ahead of the curve than they were a year ago there. So I think this defense is only going to get better.
The word I would use would be disruption. And by moving Jayshawn Barham to the edge, they have gotten far more disruptive as a defensive line, as a pass rush. And, whether Derek Moore was banged up to start the year and TJ Guy was working through something, whatever that was. Jayshawn Barham leads the team in pressures, and he's played defensive line for 2 weeks, and he's been every bit as effective as some of those counting numbers would indicate there. That's huge for them. And I think when a guy like when he gets extra attention, that opens things up for other guys. That was the one thing, is that, I like their depth on the defensive line, but until Jayshawn Barham is down there playing edge, you don't really have a guy that you need to devote extra assets to. And now that you have that with him, I do think that opens up a world of possibilities for them up front. And like you said, the goal for Wink Martindale and this Michigan defense is get your best 11 on the field. And Jayshawn Barham is not just one of your best 11. He might be your best defender, period. And it allows you to have a guy in Cole Sullivan out there more, who might be one of your best 3 or 4 when it comes to pure talent, playmaking ability on that side of the ball. He's flashed or made a big play in every game so far. So that, I think it just allowed them to have their 2 of their best defenders out there doing freaky things. with the athletes that they are. So I'm
in the
encouraged by
spots that they play the best at too. Like Jay Sean, and guess what? It's going to make him a hell of a lot of money if he stays there at edge. And what's his upside as a draft pick at edge? It's probably first round. I don't know that I'd project it, but he certainly has a chance. What was his upside at off-ball linebacker? Probably third or fourth round. So he's in a spot that it suits him better, it looks like, at least for now, and is going to make him more money. And as Sherrone Moore called him today, Wink Martindale is a wizard, just kind of piecing things together. Where do you want this guy? Where does he fit best? So
I completely buried the lead here too. We heard Jay Sean Barnum speak today.
Yes, we did.
He spoke 2 words, but that's the 2 first words we've ever heard him speak.
Do you remember what they were?
Hi, coach. Is that what it was?
I think it was what's good.
Okay. I'll have to go back and listen to that. But yeah, there are no like AI voice models of Jay Sean Barham out there because the man does not speak to the media. He is an enigma. But yeah, defense, sum it up, defensive line, front 7, I think trending way up. I think as Rod Moore gets healthier, the back of that defense will round into form too. And by the end of this year, I do think that they will be as good as they were last season. Let's go to Blue.
Before we take
Blue,
real quick, can we just stay on this topic real quick? TJ Guy, someone asked, what about TJ Guy? Is he going to be pushed out? I don't think so at all. I think he's your third edge at this point now that Jay Sean's down there. He still had 4 pressures and had a good game against Nebraska with Jay Sean in the lineup. So he's not going anywhere. You just have more depth now because TJ Guy is pushed out of his starting spot, but he's not pushed out of the rotation. He's still going to have an impact. And let me look at how many snaps he played against Nebraska. He still played 34. I think they were on the field for, was it 75 against Nebraska? So, but one of the higher edge counts, snap counts in that game. So no, TJ Guy's not going anywhere.
We talked about that a ton too, where the best Michigan defenses over these last few years have had 4, sometimes 5 guys who get consequential game snaps there. So even with a dwindled role or a different role, guy's going to play a ton. So he's certainly a factor. We will go to the super chat from GoBlue982, our good buddy here for $5. He says, after seeing Illinois run through USC, I feel better about our chances at the Coliseum with our 3-headed battering ram. I assume that means your 2 backs with Justice Haynes, Jordan Marshall, and the quarterback run weapon that Bryce Underwood brings. We talk about things that we want to see Saturday. I do wonder how that quarterback run game evolves now that, it's been in all season, but really has been run the last 2 games. Then you had another week to sort of implement it, and Bryce gets those reps of making those quick decisions. So I am really interested in seeing how that develops as well.
Yeah, now that Sherrone Moore's back too, I feel like he wanted to implement that going into CMU, and then he wasn't around to see it. So we'll see how the offense continues to evolve. Not that your offensive-minded head coach is back, but absolutely was encouraged. And if you're a USC fan, should be discouraged about, their run defense. Illinois went for 35 carries, 171 yards, 1 touchdown. That's 4.9 yards per carry. USC had been holding up against the run previously, but Michigan State, they don't have a great back. The other teams that USC played, what would it be, Missouri State, Georgia Southern, and at Purdue, they don't have the capability to test you. So the stats are one thing. This early in the year, you have to read much, or you don't read much into them. You have to kind of read more between the lines, take more stock into who you played, all these sorts of things and different factors. So feel good about that opportunity, but Michigan's Michigan's O-line's got to continue to come together and just let Justice and Jordan and Bryce Underwood cook. You don't need to go for 300 in that game, but if you can consistently move the football on the ground and hit some plays through the air, you're going to be in pretty good shape. And their secondary looks pretty vulnerable.
Yeah, that's a ball control game for me. Win the time of possession, run the football,
take the air out of the ball.
That's right. All the things that Michigan fans don't want them to do. Just because USC's, I hate that I feel like we're looking towards USC. There's a game on Saturday, but USC is a team where, again, they're not as maybe dangerous as the Lincoln Riley teams that they had a couple years ago, but they could score in a play. And a given play, they could score. And that Mekhi Lemon is absolutely incredible. So you want to sustain drives. You want to keep them off the field and have that time of possession in your favor. Going to go to the board for a question now. Let's take this one from How about a USC question? After I just said there's a game against Wisconsin on Saturday.
Hey, we're just answering questions. We're not
That's
looking
right.
ahead. We're just answering.
This is from SB Blue. He says USC has a pretty bad defense. How do we take best advantage of that to improve going forward?
Well, I think Anthony just answered that one. I mean, that you attack them, right? Yeah, it starts on the ground, I think, because of the vulnerability there from USC. But I also think the secondary, like I said, is when you watch Michigan State, I know they are a good passing offense, but they took advantage of that as well. They had some really big plays through the air. Some of their other games, you see the opportunities there. So I think it's just continue to do what you do. If you're Michigan, that offense is going to continue to evolve throughout the season. And Bryce Underwood's going to continue to do a little bit more, get a little bit better, be a little more comfortable. So it's no special formula, I feel like. But I do think, Justice Haynes has to be kind of licking his chops a little bit, looking ahead. But he shouldn't be looking ahead. We can look ahead, but he shouldn't be.
And I feel like I just addressed that already. So this is from N. Bolig, who says, concerning or not concerning? He has three things here. Number one, I'll just go point by point. Number one, Wink Martindale and his apparent need to go to cover zero in high leverage situations. Is that concerning or not concerning?
I've seen this out there on the internet like last week or so. I don't recall too many this year where he's actually doing that. He's going to do it at times. Like, to say you should never go zero as a defensive coordinator is crazy. And a guy like Wink is going to say, at times you have to do it. But they're running some simulated pressures where it looks like you're bringing a guy, but you're actually dropping some other guys. So it's not like you're bringing the house. You still have guys back in coverage, and he's going to continue to mix things up. So no, you have to go zero at times. Even like when you show it, sometimes you do have to come, and sometimes you're going to back off. But it's all part of a bigger plan to keep the offense honest. So no, that's not a concern for me.
But number two, I'll take this one. He says receiving targets for Underwood.
Is that a concern for you though? The zero?
No, because I don't feel like we've seen it a ton.
No.
I think what's killed them is the third and longs. Like that Oklahoma game, every got to have it third and long. Michigan couldn't get off the field. That's where a game like USC, those downs will win or lose you the football game. So I don't worry as much about. And at this point, I think I don't want to say Wink Martindale has a free pass, but I don't feel like anything he's done has cost them a game. Just my opinion. Just closed out of my tab. What did I do that for? Oh, concerning or not concerning? He says receiving targets for Underwood with the tight end injuries and wide receiver troubles. We sort of hit on that. A little bit concerned. It's a big week for those guys. I don't know that we need to talk about that one all that much more. I would say that I am concerned. I don't know what the ceiling of that is this year. I don't think it's particularly high, but I think it could be much better. And then number three, he says the not insignificant number of coaching gaffes, like the end of the first half in Nebraska, being conservative overall at Oklahoma, and the continued special teams issues that look fixable. That is concerning to me. And it has been going back to last season. They say that there is an operations guy upstairs. I don't know who that is. I don't need to know who it is. I just know that there are times when probably someone needs to buzz down and make a quick decision, and that doesn't happen. And there have been those gaffes there, and I'll be honest, that does concern me.
Biff Poggi won't be in charge of that.
That one was the extreme. That's the extreme.
Yeah, that was egregious. And Sherrone Moore gave Biff Poggi an A for winning both games, and that's all that matters. And that's absolutely what he should do. I mean, Sherrone Moore's the one that got suspended. Someone had to take over in his absence, and the guy that did take over won both games. But that was egregious at the end of the first half against Nebraska. Like you said, there were some instances last season when there were questionable decisions, whether it were a couple challenges that really Michigan had no shot of winning that, Sherrone Moore challenged. And then you had the Indiana not taking the timeout quick enough. I will say, to give the coaching staff credit, I really love the way they're running the 2-minute drives. I think Chip Lindsey deserves a lot of credit for the way he's managed those. I love the way he has managed the 4-minute drives or the 9-minute drive. It's 4-minute offense, but if 4-minute offense turns into a 9-minute drive, in the fourth quarter. And I know it wasn't a true like 4-minute offense type situation, but you had to eat some clock there against Nebraska, and you did, and he managed it well. So they have to get credit for that as well. And I actually thought Biff did a good job calling timeout to get them in a 2-minute situation before half against CMU, right before the field goal attempt. So they're doing some of those things pretty well. There are some other times when you're like shaking your head a little bit, like, shoot, you could have done that a little bit better. But I'm always concerned about something like that, because something like that could make or break a game. But that's kind of regardless of coaching staff.
All right, we're going to take this last one here. Oh, well, last two here, because we have a super chat from GoBlue982. He says, on the topic of rankings, the AP ranking is junk, just fodder for ESPN. No ranking should take place until November. I mean, we have colleagues that are AP voters. I have some of these people take it very seriously. Some of these people not so much. It's a discussion point. It's TV ratings. It's web engagement. The rankings don't matter until November, but I learned a long time ago not to get bent out of shape about all that.
Yeah, they really don't matter, like in terms of what's actually going to happen on the field. And yeah, it's just a bunch of people that didn't watch games that look at a box score maybe and vote, but someone's always going to rank something. So if the AP went away, someone else would start one. Hell, maybe I would for the clicks, but so it just is what it is. But yeah, you're right.
I do an unbiased, totally accurate Big Ten ranking. You know,
right? Anyone
can do it.
But that's actually accurate, though, is the difference.
And it's unbiased. It's important to remember that as well.
True.
We'll close out with this one. Christopher Durr says, how close is this team realistically to being a playoff team, serious contender for a title? Well, I think they could be a playoff team this year. Title contender, I think we're looking. And if they blow our expectations away and they're that this year, hand to God, I'll own it here. But I still think they're a year away from that. They're probably another good recruiting class and some aggressive portal spending at skill positions from being that, in my mind.
Well, what title are we talking about? Because if it's Big Ten, like, do I think Michigan could be part of the tiebreaker to get to the Big Ten championship and either get there to Indianapolis or, lose the tiebreaker depending on how it shakes out? Absolutely. And then I would say you were a contender for the Big Ten title. Playoff, you're absolutely a contender. You have one loss only. So, I mean, I guess a lot of teams could be in that boat, but you also look like a team capable of beating any team that's on your schedule. You have a schedule that's pretty favorable because you avoid Penn State and Oregon, in Indiana and Illinois and Iowa at the top. And Anthony, I've been going through your Big Ten power rankings each week, and that top half or the top 10 that you do, and then the rest are in the bottom 8. Like, Michigan doesn't play a lot of those teams. And, so Michigan is certainly there as a contender for the playoff. And then depending on what title you're talking about, I don't think national title, like you said, maybe a year or two away, if ever in this short stretch here, but Big Ten, certainly, I think you're there.
I would agree with that. Big Ten title wise, I mean, like I said, with unbalanced schedules, you could be there as soon as this year.
You can't win the Big Ten East anymore, which is too bad. Or co-Big Ten East.
No, you know what? I've been thinking about this. I miss the Big Ten West and that wacky, ridiculous affront to college football. I miss the chaos so much. But
I miss like a guy like putting his arm up. They call it a fair catch, but they don't blow the whistle dead. He catches the punt, returns it for a touchdown. They go to review. They're reviewing how high his hand was in the air for a fair. Minnesota, Iowa a couple years ago. I mean, just the most. It was like the MAC, but just.
And all of this happened in the noon window on ESPN2. All
right.
of this craziness happened.
Beth Mowins was on the call. I miss.
That's right. I miss her. I miss the Big Ten West. That's a good play. I'll end lamenting on that today. Be sure to like this video. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Again, most of you are not subscribed, so take the time. I'm giving you 5 seconds right now to do it. We're good. Thank you for doing that for us. It helps us show up in your feeds. It helps us show up in searches. All of that. So have us sent right to you that way. Again, use that promo code UM1 for 2 months of access to our site for a single dollar. For Clayton Safey, our producer Megan behind the scenes, I'm Anthony Broom. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll talk to you again later this week.